Speech is titled, Give Solar a Chance. Climate change is the defining issue of our time. We are at a defining moment. From shifting weather patterns that threaten food production to rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic flooding, the impacts of climate change are global in scope and unprecedented in scale. Without drastic action today, adapting to these impacts in the future will be more difficult and costly. These are not my fluffed up words that I've written to scare you. It's actually the direct quote verbatim from the United Nations Climate Report of 2018. So here today, I ask for your help not as Americans or friends or relatives of my wonderful girlfriend. Gotcha. Instead, I ask for your help as part of mankind to help solve a problem and an issue that the clock is ticking on, and it is going to run out if we do not take drastic action today. I chose this topic as it directly affects our day-to-day lives. Climate change is a serious issue with detrimental effects on our existence. It's not some boogeyman the liberals scrounged up to create votes. It's a true and serious issue which we need to face today, right here and now. Today I will share with you and help you to understand what fossil fuels are and what greenhouse gases are and how they impact our climate. I'll also be informing you of switching to green energy and why it's a must, not just for climate change, but for the upcoming energy crisis within the next 50 to 100 years. Second, satisfaction of switching to solar energy and both the financial and emission benefits they offer. Finally, how you young adults can help bring about the change for the future. Let's begin with understanding what greenhouse gases are. Greenhouse gases, as a term defined here, are a gas that absorbs and traps heat inside the Earth's atmosphere. The most known or notable of these are these three here: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Carbon dioxide is the greatest and largest culprit of being a greenhouse gas. It is emitted through coal, natural gas, and oil emissions. It's also actually created during the manufacturing of cement, which I didn't know before I started this project, which is pretty cool to learn about. Up next is actually methane. It's produced from the transportation of these other defined issues that I mentioned, coal, oil, and gas. But the biggest issue is, it's not when it's burning that it's actually bad, because when it's burning, it's one of the cleanest gases around. Unfortunately, the retrieval of methane gas or natural gas is impossible to be incredibly efficient and therefore is released into the atmosphere. And when in doing so, methane is actually one of the one of the most damaging of the greenhouse gases. Finally, there's nitrous oxide. It's not nearly as large in scope compared to either of these. In fact, it's half of what methane is produced into the atmosphere, but it is still a part of these greenhouse gases. It's emitted during agricultural practices, industrial practices, combustion of fossil fuels, just like these other two, and also in the treatment of wastewater, which makes it a little bit more difficult due to the situation at hand. Now, as for these emissions, I do have here the U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in 2017. This is sourced from the United States Environmental Protection Agency right here in April of 2018. Now, according to this, 82% of all greenhouse emission gases were fossil fuel combustion, oil, coal, and natural gases. This is a very large issue because this is what we use for our energy sources today. After that, we have 10% of it being methane, and that's not due to the burning of it, but it's actually due to the retrieval, and nitrous oxide due for all the other aforementioned reasons. Now, these numbers don't mean a whole lot when I just give you the percentages of what were released, but back in 2008, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 76 million tons of CO2 alone were produced just in the agricultural business in the United States back in 2008. It's only growing larger over the last decade. Now, to begin on a new resource, first I'm actually going to cover the understanding of how fossil fuels are going to be diminishing here within the next 50 to 100 years. According to BP's Statistical Review of World Energy back in 2016, they actually only found that there's only 50 and 53 years left of oil and natural gas left on this earth in our reserves, while coal only has 114 years left. Coal's actually really high, but that doesn't take into account once we are finished with our oil and natural gas reserves, we're going to be needing more coal to sustain our current energy demands. This alone, to me, screams that we need renewable energy sources. Not even for the climate change itself, but within the next century, our children, our grandchildren, those individuals are going to need different renewable energy resources to be able to produce what we enjoy today, even in this household. Now, after covering the reliance on fossil fuels and the upcoming demand for new and renewable energy sources, I'd like to actually talk about solar panels. Solar panels, according to the research published by the International Energy Agency, have been known that within a single day, within 8 hours, we actually produce enough sunlight to energize the entire planet. It's a quote directly from the International Energy Agency. The world consumed 18.3 terawatt years of energy in 2014. It only takes 8 hours of sunlight to be able to produce 21 terawatt years of solar energy. There's a clear supply for it. There's a clear demand that is only looming and growing for this. The only issue actually right now is the storage of solar panel energy and solar energy itself. But rather than wait for this demand to only skyrocket as we lose other sources of energy, I'd rather try to attempt for us to, in the coming years, to build these solar panels now and to provide a supply and to provide a station for where we can start to build this as the technology continues to grow through studies and research and projects. One of the questions I've actually received whenever I start getting on my soapbox about solar panels is actually, do they actually help? Do the energy that is taken or needed to create these solar panels, does it actually pay off in the long run? Whether it's because of the chemical buildings or just the energy to manufacture them, produce them, and ship them, and install them. And it's actually been found that here in that within the next 2 years of installation, that they actually already are producing and paying back the energy demands that they were installed and created by. They also, due to absorbing so much energy, and a large-scale creation and installation of solar panels, and their largest simulations done by a research scientist and climate change research center for the National Center of Atmospheric Research by the name of Ashi Hu, found that solar panels produce a 2 degrees Celsius decrease in the deserts where they would be largest in implementation. It wouldn't be a world change, but it would be in these areas that a 2 degrees Celsius degree change would occur. Now, for some of you, I do understand buying and installing solar panels isn't financially viable. Some of us don't even own a house, let alone have the extra income to start purchasing and going about with solar panels. But even with the political struggles in the US from President Trump's push for coal, TerraForm Power has actually seen financial improvements in all of their metrics, including earnings per share, which is something you can invest in. Another company by the name of Ormat Technologies has continued to see their stock stand strong. And from their growth in April of 2014 to April of 2019, they have doubled. And actually, as of me writing this article and actually doing this presentation here today, can prove that their company has only grown because it's done another $3.50 up until this last point, to where it's now up to $61.52. So it's clearly financially viable right here and right now because it's working right here and right now. Real quick, I do want to do an experience of whether or not these will actually pay off here by imagining the difference with solar panels now versus later. With solar panels, the implementation and the financial support for clean energy sparks change rapidly with manufacturing, with jobs, with here in Colorado and Wyoming, where sunlight is very important and sunlight is very applicable. It also is very important to Arizona. This would spark a nationwide change for green energy and bringing about the end of climate change or diminishing it greatly. Like without solar panels would essentially begin to continue to burn fossil fuels, as all the stories that I've continued to tell you already would burn until we're running out of resources for the planetary needs, and eventually we wouldn't be able to sustain what our current demands are for energy. Now share the problem of climate change and a solution to change our ways. Now I ask of you to put effort into supporting solar energy in any way possible. Whether it's supporting research, investing in companies that produce, manufacture, and install these, whether it's large-scale companies that are on the stock market, right here within your hometown. Climate change isn't going to magically vanish. Action by each and every one of us is needed to negate the effects that we currently contribute in our day-to-day lives. Solar energy is financially profitable and sustainable. If we all take action, we can cut down on our carbon emissions. Here, I have information created for the closest solar panel companies located right here in Colorado. Do hope you enjoy.